By now, League of Legends is really well known for two things. Its never-ending fight with toxicity and retconning. Sure, retconning is something that happens to every universe eventually, at least if you want to keep that universe running. And I can already tell you multiple instances of other universes where this happened. And with Riot's new movement towards making League of Legends a progressive game, where now we are getting seasons that are actually pushing the story forward, in order for that to work, once again it seems like some retconning has to happen. In fact, that would be for the 4th time this universe had some kind of a reset. But yes, since the ending of the last season, which is where Xin Zhao's storyline had quite the outcome, in order for that moment to be really impactful, it actually had to be permanent. But for a while, there have been many different tinfoil hat theories that could explain how Xin Zhao's story can be possible while he's also dead. But surprisingly enough, we did get a new piece of information that tells us what's actually going on. And spoiler alert, it has to do with the new metagame. Now, before we get into the new lore that we got, let's actually talk about the metagame itself, because there is also some news there that I didn't mention last time. You see, quite the big thing that I somehow managed to miss is that together with the release of the metagame, we did also get the post about it, and there it was nonchalantly mentioned that this is gonna be the only metagame of this year, which, makes me sad, but I think I understand why it is happening. To be fair, I think these metagames are a key part of the new seasonal system. Without them, the seasons wouldn't have as much spice as they do right now. Sure, during the Ionian season, not that many people played the Battle for Koshin, but my god, was the Demon's Hand really awesome! Not to mention that all of these metagames told crucial parts of the stories. With that said, if the metagames go away and we still keep the comics, that is still gonna be really good, but I would like to keep the metagames in because they tie everything together. But again, there is a good reason why these are likely going away. And that is the fact that, as Riot confirmed, most of the League of Legends team is now working on stuff in the new client. Now, we all know that League of Legends will get a brand new in-game client in 2027, meaning that 2026 will likely not have that much stuff happening. At least, that is my assumption. It would be far better for Riot to turn this into a sort of a setup where they push out a new client and then they show us, hey, look at all of this awesome stuff that we can make in this client. So yes, for that reason specifically, I guess I understand why this is gonna be the only metagame of this year. But again, it is sad to see there's not gonna be more of these. And partially that is also because, again, this game also gave us some new lore. But it didn't give it without a fight, because at first people had to fight quite a few bugs. Yes, if you tried to play this minigame sometime during its launch, you were surprised with the game not really working. At least for some people. I didn't have an issue, but some people just saw lines of code across the screen for no real reason. Most of these bugs should be fixed by now, but at the beginning it was quite funny to see what's actually going on. Nevertheless, one thing that people point out is the progression system of this game. Sure, I understand if people are not fans of having to play a League of Legends in order to play this game, because in order to make moves in this strategy game, you have to use Valor, which you get for playing League of Legends. Though I get it for playing TFT, because TFT also gives you the currency. And so I just play some TFT on my phone, and then I wake up and, hey, there's Valor. But thankfully, if you remember something like the Ruination, you would know that the pacing of this event is actually quite good. The old Ruination event was locked even behind bigger walls. Although, what those two events have in common is the fact that the content is also locked behind patches. And so right now, in Demacia Rising, you can get the first 2 chapters, and now we are waiting for the next patch, which should be up tomorrow. Speaking of which, tomorrow is also when there should be a whole new comic that's gonna further explain what's happening after this minigame. Again, we'll get to the crucial part in a moment. First, I also appreciate the fact how everything is covered in lore references. including the units, where they borrowed quite a few units from the Mageseeker game, including the spearmen and the soldiers, who look like the bulky petricite armored guys from the Mageseeker game. Also, I appreciate the canonical variety in the enemies. You are attacked by wild drakehounds, confirming that drakehounds are not only from Noxus, but also there are barbarians and trolls and yetis and yes, even giant dragons attacking your cities. I also like that if you lose a city, it's not like much happens. You essentially lose resources, so you have to play more League. But other than that, it's not really a big deal. So even the most casual players can play this. However, the coolest part of lore that comes out of this minigame is the lore behind the cities. Because the vast majority of the cities you get to conquer in this game actually have some background. So why don't we go through all of those, right? For example, there is Zephyra, which is the capital city of Demacia. Or at least now it was confirmed to be the capital city of Demacia. Before we knew this was the ancient city, but later it gets ruined and then we didn't know if the new capital was built on top of the old one. It definitely seems to be that way now, because on the official map, Zephyra is still just called the Great City of Demacia. What an awesome name for a capital city. Anyway, right next to it there is Vescasia, which originally on the map, that one was actually to the south. There were some Lux stories that happened in this city, though they were never directly confirmed. But what is cool is that Jarro Lightfeather appeared here at the beginning of his journeys, with Jarro Lightfeather being Ezreal. That's his own fake name that he made up for himself. Anyway, then next to that there is Brook Hollow. Now this seems to be a new place that was made up for the purposes of gameplay. Though I appreciate the naming because Needlebrook is right next to it, so the names match. Then there is Evenmoor. Now Evenmoor did have one tiny story, and that's the one with Jarvan who led an army here, and that's kinda it. However, then there is Terbesia, which actually has a lot of lore. And this is because not only does this city appear in Lux's stories, but also in the Mageseeker game. So first of all, this city got ruined with a massive earthquake. This destroyed the vast majority of the city, and so the Illuminators, together with Lux, traveled here to help the dying people. After this catastrophe, the city was left in rubble for many years, until the Mage Rebellion happened. Which is when Lux traveled here and she hid a lot of mages here away from the Mageseekers. Of course, in the Mageseeker game we learned that the Mageseekers eventually found out about this place, and so Wisteria, which is basically the main boss of the Mageseeker game, marched here with the intention of killing all the present mages as well as Lux. Of course, in that game, since we play as Sylas, we defend the city from all the Mageseekers. We even fight a really cool Silverwing here, and eventually we win and Lux becomes the governor of this city, with Jarvan allowing her to keep Terbesia as a safe haven for mages. So yes, it is quite an important city I am looking forward to seeing in the MMO. Anyway, then there is Tyburn, which seems to be a new city that was also made up. After which there is Jendale, which also has some lore. First of all, Jarro Lightfeather was here as well. In fact, this is where he found a pair of Kindred masks, and he got afraid of them. But also, this is where one of Kindred's stories called A Good Death happened. In fact, this is where death itself took the life of the main character. So Jendale is quite linked to death. Then there is High Silvermere. Of course, we know that this is where Lux and Garen are from. But also, this is the city where the Silverwing Raptors are trained. Then there is Uvendale. Now, Uvendale is connected to two champions. According to Quinn's old lore, this is where Quinn and her brother are from. But also, Poppy is very well known in this city as the Slayer of Monsters. This happened during the time when Poppy was traveling around Demacia looking for the right owner of the Hammer of Orlon. And as she was trying to find a hero, she just killed all the monsters in her way, and she became a hero. But then there is also Meltrich right next to that. This is also a known city, because we've heard about this one from the Turmoil story. That's right, during the one story where Demacians escorted a mage called Arjan of Arbormark into the capital city to help them with the Mage Rebellion, they actually traveled through Meltrich, and Meltrich is where all the people rebelled against the Dauntless Vanguard. That's where the biggest portion of that story happened, so this is quite a big one. Also, you do actually get here in the Mageseeker game as well. You learn that this is where the Mageseekers are executing mages, and so of course, as Sylas, you save them. Then next to that there is a Cloudfield. Of course we know Cloudfield for one thing, that's where Cythria is from. Cythria is called a Cythria of Cloudfield. And lastly there is also Pinara. This city is not really that important. It was literally mentioned once in the For Demacia story, and Garen and Lux traveled through this place to get to Phosboro, which is where they fought a famous demon. But honestly, that's it. So, as you can see, all of these cities are heavily rooted in lore that is already established. And so, one would expect that all this lore will be respected in a perfect manner. Unless Jarvan comes onto the screen and reveals a big lore drop. So, as you progress through the objectives of Chapter 2, we learn about one thing. As of the events of this metagame, Xin Zhao is dead. And here we can see Jarvan and Lux talking about him. On one side, Jarvan talks about how great of a friend Xin Zhao was to him, and how he taught him about honor and valor. But also we learn that Lux wasn't that close to him, which totally makes sense, they were from totally separate parts of the royal families. But also we learned that Lux will have a role at the memorial for Xin Zhao. Now, on one side, it is cool to see that the lore is developing, but on the other side, this actually retconned a pretty big part of the lore. You see, originally, Xin Zhao was to be there for the Mage Rebellion, which hasn't happened yet. Truth be told, his role wasn't that big in everything that happened, but it was crucial for the Aftermath story, which is a story that explained exactly what happened after the Mage Rebellion kicked off. Jarvan was very mad at Xin Zhao because Xin Zhao was supposed to be there to protect his father, but the father died, and this hatred is what led into Jarvan IV actually continuing the battle with the Mage Seekers against the mages. If his father lived, there would be peace. And so again, Jarvan's hatred was kinda underlined by Xin Zhao. But now we know that didn't happen, because Xin Zhao wasn't there. Because he was just gone. Now, there was a theory where it would be possible that LeBlanc would be playing Jarvan in that one cinematic, and so that the message that Xin Zhao died wouldn't actually get to the capital city, and instead, what if LeBlanc took the body of Xin Zhao and she pretended to be Xin Zhao, allowing the story to keep going as if nothing happened, except it was LeBlanc the entire time? If Riot pulled this off in this way, that would be amazing. But now we know that Jarvan knows that Xin Zhao is dead, and because they talk about it, Lux has to know about it, and everyone knows about it. Which means Jarvan has to be really pissed off by another thing in order for the Mage Rebellion to really start, and I'm gonna assume that's because Katarina is still going to kill his father. So again, sure, Xin Zhao is not that important for the story, but this confirmed that there was another retcon. And I'm not really surprised.